former senators and their spouses, current and former members of the executive and the judiciary, members of the diplomatic corps and various consulates, our Papal Nuncio, His Excellency, His Eminence, I should say, Archbishop Cassia, executives of the local government units, my dear colleagues, their spouses, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a practice of former Senate presidents to mention the achievements of the past regular session as a preliminary statement in the opening of the new regular session. However, today, I will break away from that tradition as I will just submit to you the Senate's accomplishment, with special thanks, of course, to the leadership of Senate President Aquilino Coco Pimentel III. Today, we commence the third regular session of the 17th Congress on the part of one of its two component houses, the Senate of the Republic of the Philippines. Like all beginnings, it is a fine time for looking back, a time to presently locate ourselves, and a moment to reflect on the path towards our dream for peace, prosperity, and happiness for all. Those who do not look back to their history as one threatened are condemned to repeat it. We had senators elected by districts before. Then we changed the system to nationally elected senators to prevent regionalism. And now, some think regional states may be right after all. We've had single-house legislatures before. The National Assembly in the early decades of the 20th century, then bicameral with President Manuel Quezon as the first Senate President, then single house again when we had the Batasang Pambansa under the 1973 Constitution, back to the bicameral in the 1987 Constitution, and now we debate again which is the best. We had a 4-year term of office before with one re-election for president. Then we said it made the president political in his first term. So we decided to have a single 6-year term. And now there are those who think it might have been right to have a 4-year term with one re-election after all. We therefore recall the saying that goes, quote, "Of forms of government, let fools contest. That which is best administered is best." End of quote. The road towards progress serves as our way forward, but that same road doubles as a limitation of our moves too. We must abide by the rules of driving, such as staying on the right and inside of your lane, passing on the left, and driving at appropriate speed. The careless and reckless driver is bound to land us in a roadside canal or a muddy rice field. In lawmaking, that road where we travel as a nation is limited by our 1987 Constitution, our laws, Supreme Court decisions, and our sense of reasonableness, equity, fairness, and justice. Tradition is also a useful guidepost to temper our desire for novel adventures and experimentation. To do otherwise is to court disaster. Kasabihan sa Pilipino, ang lumalakad ng matulin, kung matinik ay malalim. We in the Senate comprise one of the two essential component houses of the legislative department, as set forth in Article 6, Section 1 of the 1987 Constitution, which states, quote, "The legislative power shall be vested in the Congress of the Philippines, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives." End of quote. The use of the word shall, as any student of law learns early in his studies, means that it is compulsory. Our Constitution further states that the Senate shall be composed of 24 senators, while the House of Representatives shall be composed of not more than 250 members. The Senate is essential in any and all matters pertaining to legislation. And whenever Congress is mandated to exercise some functions, it is obvious that 250 beats 24 anytime. But to claim that the procedure in the legislative department is a purely numbers game is to miss the point big time. There would be no need for any Senate counterpart bills, no need for bicameral conference committees, no need for joint resolutions, and no joint assemblies if that lame argument is carried to its absurd conclusion. Sa pagpapalit ng pangalan ng eskwela o paaralan sa isang liblib na sulok ng Pilipinas, kailangan ng Senado. Sa pagtatakda ng umpisa at katapusan ng Christmas break ng Kongreso, kailangan ng Senado. Sa pagpapalit ng pangalan ng mga kalsada, kailangan ng Senado. Sa pagtatalaga ng isang espesyal na araw sa isang maliit na bayan ng bansa, kailangan ang Senado. Sa maliliit na bagay, kailangan kami. Pero sa pag-iiba ng konstitusyon ng Pilipinas, hindi kailangan ng Senado. If our consent is needed in small things, more so in bigger things. Now, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is not my intention to preside over an unnecessary body of the legislative department of the Philippine Republic. It would be a dishonor to the memory of this august body, whose name brings us back to the glory days of Rome, all the way up to the great Manuel Luis Quezon, whose tenure as Commonwealth President intersected at some point with my grandfather, Vicente Y. Soto. To say or even insinuate that we are unnecessary and irrelevant is unacceptable. I do not wish to preside during my watch over the necrological services of the Philippine Senate, especially so today, when we are confronted with a number of momentous choices affecting our nation. Questions: do we shift from presidential to parliamentary form of government? Do we retain a unitary republic or try the federal system? Do we transform our regions to states themselves? And some even ask, pray tell, bakit? The Senate is the forum, the ring, within which these ideas will struggle for supremacy. It is the stage where these ideas are proposed and debated. And finally, it is the rostrum from which far-reaching decisions are promulgated. So in this third regular session, we look forward in passing more relevant measures that will be beneficial to the Filipino people. The Senate has a distinct role DNA to preserve in the life of our nation, an integrity to defend, and an honor to die for. The memories of the giants who sat in this hall, in this august hall, will forever hound us if we drop the ball at this crucial hour. This afternoon, we shall hear the President address the nation through us. We shall listen with our hearts and minds, and afterwards, we shall do what is best for our country in our mandated role as the Senate of the people of the Philippines. So may the God of our fathers, the Allah of our brother Muslims, in our own Bathala and May Kapal, guide us always. Thank you. Shukran. Salamat po ng marami. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. While we are waiting to receive a message from the House of Representatives on concurrent resolution number 18, as well as concurrent resolution number 11, as well as our bicameral conference committee report on the Bangsamoro, may I move to suspend session for 1 minute, Mr. President.
Session is suspended. Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
We'll just ask our colleagues to settle down, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we continue, I'd like to just congratulate our colleague for being world champion once again in the field of boxing, Senator Manny Emmanuel Pacquiao. He has brought pride once again to our country, Mr. President. A job well done. I apologize to him for not being able to watch as we were busy with the Bangsamoro organic law.
Yes, congratulations to Senator
They're asking for
Manny Pacquiao.
a blowout. I can't put that on record. Mr. President, moving forward, I'd like to ask you the permission of the body to consider House Concurrent Resolution number 18. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, House Concurrent Resolution number 18 is now in order. The Secretary will read the text and the title of the resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution number 18 entitled Concurrent Resolution Providing for the Senate and the House of Representatives to hold a joint session to hear the message of the President of the Republic of the Philippines. Resolved by the House of Representatives, the Senate concurring that both Houses of Congress of the Republic of the Philippines hold a joint session on Monday, July 23, year 2018 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the Session Hall of the House of Representatives to hear the message of the President of the Republic of the Philippines adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt House Concurrent Resolution number 18.
Majority Leader, it is clear
Yes,
that
Mr.
the
President.
resolution calls for a joint session to hear. It's very specific that it is to
Yes, Mr.
hear the
President.
message of the President.
Very loud and clear.
There is nothing else.
No other agenda, sir.
Therefore, if there is no objection, the resolution number 18 is hereby approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Concurrent Resolution number 11. Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, Senate Concurrent Resolution number 11 is in order. The Secretary will read the title and the text of the resolution.
Senate Concurrent Resolution number 11 entitled Concurrent Resolution Creating a Joint Committee of the Senate and the House of Representatives to notify the President of the Philippines that Congress, now convened for its third regular session of the 17th Congress of the Philippines, is ready to hear his State of the Nation address in a joint session of both houses. Resolved by the Senate, the House of Representatives of the Philippines concurring, that a joint committee of both houses of Congress be created, composed of 21 members, 4 to be appointed by the President of the Senate and 17 to be appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, to notify the President of the Philippines that Congress, now convened for its third regular session of the 17th Congress of the Philippines, is ready to hear his State of the Nation address in a joint session of both houses. Adopted.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt Senate Concurrent Resolution number 11. Mr. President.
The motion is to approve Senate Concurrent Resolution number 11, and it is clear in the resolution that we are convened to hear the State of the Nation of the President. Is that correct?
That is
Mr. Majority
very
Leader?
correct, Your Honor, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Senate Concurrent Resolution number 11 is hereby approved.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journals of the 78th session, May 28, 29, and 30, 2018, and the 79th session, May 30 to 31, 2018, of the second regular session of the 17th Congress, and consider them approved. I so move.
Before I withdraw that, Mr. Majority Leader, the motion is to approve the journal.
Journals, yes.
Any objection? Senator, the Minority Leader, Senator Rilon, is recognized.
Mr. President, the journal of our previous session contained very substantial discussion, particularly on the amendments to the Bangsamoro. If there is no harm, Mr. President, can we defer the approval of the journal to tomorrow, so that we'll have an opportunity to go over this as to our mind, these are very crucial legislative records that will reflect the intention of the Senate in the approval of the Bangsamoro Basic Law. That's our submission, Mr. President.
May I ask for a 1-minute suspension, Mr. President?
The session is suspended. Session is resumed.
Ready to show, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we will accommodate the request of the minority floor leader, and I withdraw my motion to approve these journals till tomorrow. Mr.
The
President.
motion is withdrawn. Incidentally, the majority leader and our colleagues, pursuant to the resolution that we have recently passed, or just passed, concurrent resolution number 11, I hereby appoint to the Joint Ratification Committee on the part of the Senate President, the Senate President pro temp, the Majority Leader, and the Minority Leader, as requested by the Palace.
Thank you.
They are hereby nominated.
We shall inform our members, Your Honor.
Thank you,
Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, some good news today. After close to 3 administrations, we finally have reached this far. And with this, Mr. President, we'd like to put on record that we are in receipt of the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1717 and House Bill number 6475, or the Organic Law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. I move to consider the said Bicameral Committee report.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved. The Majority Leader is recognized to present the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 1717 and House Bill 6475, which is eagerly being awaited by Senator Aquilino Pimentel Jr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before I just give a small or short description of all the things that we have done, Mr. President, I would just like to thank the members of the Bicameral Conference Committee, both of the House of Representatives and the Senate, particularly the senators that were with me for 6 long hearings, marathon hearings, Mr. President, 13-hour days. We would start at 9 and at 2 in the morning every day, close to 2 weeks. During our break, during suspensions of work, we had to work 3 times out of those 6 days where there was a suspension of work for all government offices and even private offices. And we could see the dedication of our colleagues, and I'd like to thank them personally one by one, Mr. President, starting off with our minority floor leader, Mr. President Frank Drilon, who really did a yeoman's job in assisting us in coming up, heading the subcommittee groups on the powers given to the Bangsamoro justice system, and several other provisions, Mr. President. He did a wonderful job to show that this has bipartisan support. Together with our muse of the Senate contingent, not only is she pretty but highly intelligent, Mr. President, Senator Risa Ontiveros, who did a great job also of tempering the different issues and advocacies of each side. We'd like to also commend Senator Kiko Pangilinan, who was also with us in the beginning, but also to my seatmates that were there and members of the majority. I must mention, first and foremost, the former Senate President, Senator Coco Pimentel. All issues concerning local government, he really assisted us from the very beginning, being the son of the local government code, because the father of the local government code is seated right there, Your Honor. So, the brother, not to age our good former Senate President, Aquilino Pimentel Jr., but he was really so important to this legislative achievement of ours. We'd like to also thank Senator Sani Angara, the head of the Mother Committee of the local government, and he also gave so much inputs that was able to come up with the final, and help us come up with the BICAM report. When it was issues about religious freedom and labor issues, we had there Senator Joel Villanueva, who was with us to make sure that there was religious freedom in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. And of course, we'd like to also thank Senators Sherwin Gatchalian, Senators Lauren Legarda, and of course, Senator Chis Escudero. Senator Escudero, thank you so much for the amendments that you gave to us to enhance our Bangsamoro organic law. Did I miss out on anyone? Okay. So, Mr. President, I believe this is a dawn of a new beginning for Mindanao. A dawn of peace followed by unhampered prosperity for our region that I'm sure could catapult our economy to double-digit growth rates, and the effects felt all throughout the country. Many of our Filipino brothers and sisters do not really understand the Bangsamoro organic law as shown by the recent SWS surveys. But what the people should know is that this law may have local application in the Bangsamoro region, but the peace and prosperity we hope to achieve there in this area will be felt from Batanes to Tawi-Tawi. Mr. President, gone will be the days of the battlefield shown in CNN and BBC and other international news media, hopefully which will pave the way for more tourism, for more investments, not only in the country but especially in Mindanao. Mr. President, finally, to shorten this because I know we have a long day, finally, Mr. President, we can achieve a just and dignified peace for our brothers and sisters in Mindanao. Mr. President, I would just like to insert the explanatory note of the Bicameral Conference Committee report for the record and move, Mr. President, for its approval. To adopt and ratify, rather, the Bicameral Conference Committee report.
Is there no objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. President. And congratulations to the Senate and to the House of Representatives.
And congratulations
And all my
to
colleagues,
the
sir.
chairman of the ad hoc committee on the Bangsamoro Organic Law, Senator
Thank you, sir.
Bixubiri.
Now I can have
Congratulations.
restful night's sleep. Yes, we'd like to recognize some of the authors who would like to also give short messages, Mr. President, starting with Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Senator Hontiveros is recognized.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Mr. President, magandang umaga po. Assalamualaikum. We all know that unlike most laws, this act took an incredibly long, tricky, and arduous road. At the outset, at its helm, is a history of struggle that precedes all of us. A history of a region that is filled with narratives of violence and oppression. A region whose roads are paved with hunger, chaos, and countless deaths. But with the grace of Allah, here we all are. The entire process we went through, the deliberations on the bill, the public hearings in Mindanao, the arguments over provision per provision, was tedious and at times frustrating. That's why I salute all my fellow legislators, the peace advocates, the Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process, the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, whose steadfast commitment to the process is unparalleled. The ratification today is a testament to our commitment to the democratic process. It is a sign that Sometimes the system works, that all we needed was a shared and unwavering belief in justice, and that all roads lead to peace. Because in the end, Mr. President, the BBL is not our achievement. It is the success story of our Moro sisters and brothers who have been fighting relentlessly for what rightfully belongs to them and their children. And that is life and a future where they don't have to raise their children in evacuation centers, where they can sleep at night without waking up to the ripping sound of firefights and explosions, where their farmers and fisherfolk can have a just share in their lands, waters, and other resources. They earned it, Mr. President. The end of strife and the beginning of a simple, comfortable life of providing for their families, seeing their children play, go to school, and grow up to pursue their dreams. With the enactment of this bill carries our collective hope to see and realize Bangsamoro, a region that is living in harmony and peace, a place that will not be any more used as a ruse for unnecessary militarization and unending martial rule. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, I voted yes. And let me say what I said when I co-sponsored this bill in the plenary with our great Senate Subcommittee Chair Mig Zubiri. The BBL is our recognition of the justness and legitimacy of the cause of the Bangsamoro people. It is the legislative expression of our commitment to the peace process. The enactment of the organic law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao is a good place to continue this long and overdue journey to a lasting and dignified peace. Salamat po, Mr. President. Shukran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before I recognize other members who co-authored, I would like to also make special mention to those who helped us craft the final Senate report 1717. Senator Ping Lacson, who helped us craft one article on peace and order, public order and security. Thank you, sir. We also like to thank amendments given by Senator Trillanes and Senator Gordon, Senator Lauren Legardo, of course, our energy carbon neutral amendments. Yes. Senator Ralph Recto, Mr. President, who changed everything.
Oh, yeah. I was about to say that.
Yes, sir.
Who changed the entire bill.
Yes, who practically helped us write a new law from the BTC version, which was, Mr. President, which was acceptable and welcome by all sectors because he had nothing but transparency and accountability in his mind and his heart to make sure that the funds earned in Batangas, as well as Bukidnon and the other areas of the country, will be properly utilized and spent. And I also forgot to mention our secretariat, Mr. President.
What about the weapons amendment of Senator Honasan?
Yes, we'd like to also mention the weapons amendment and amendments to the Armed Forces of the Philippines section of the bill. Thank you to Senator Greg and to all the members. Senator Bam also gave a number of amendments, and those who participated. Of course, Senator Villar, who was always concerned about how public funds will be spent and how it should be placed in different orders to make sure that priority spending would be done. Together with Senator J.V. Ejercito, who went with us to Camp Darapanan, risking his own life. We all know the history of his father in the early period of 1999. His presence in Camp Darapanan was very welcomed by the MILF and said, peace can finally reign because even former enemies will now become friends, Mr. President. And again, all the other members of the Senate that supported us in this noble and historic moment for our country, Mr. President. Imagine how many decades, 4 decades and 100,000 lives lost will finally be put to an end. Mr. President, I'd like to now recognize one of the senators who single-handedly improved the Bangsamoro basic law into what it is now, the Bangsamoro organic law. Mr. President, I move to recognize our Senate President Pro Tem, Ralph Recto.
The President Pro Tem, Senator Recto, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the Majority Leader and the sponsor of this measure. Thank you for his kind words. But, Mr. President, I support the Bicameral Conference Committee report. I voted in favor, essentially because what has passed
is essentially the Senate version, Mr. President, with the exception of one or two provisions, Mr. President. I do have some reservations as far as these one or two provisions are concerned, particularly on the 40% development fund, which was not adopted in the BICAM version, Mr. President. And just to manifest on and to put on record, Mr. President, that in the first 3 years, there is a fiscal cost to the national government here, Mr. President, as I mentioned during the period of amendments. And roughly, our calculation is roughly 370 billion in the next 3 years, Mr. President. And that is why we put on record amendments in the Senate version then that 40% of this money should be spent for development projects. I understand that there is a process in the BICAM and that they put a limitation on the PS and wrote certain language that health and education should be given utmost priority. But like I said, I do have reservations because if 40% was deleted, then that money can be spent for other purposes instead of development projects. That is one, Mr. President, just to put that on the record. And the second issue is that what was also deleted is the 50-50 hating kapatid sharing, Mr. President. And I take note that in the Bicameral Conference Committee report, for the next 10 years, the Bangsamoro region will not contribute anything to the national government, not a single cent to the national government, at least in the first 10 years. So these are my reservations on the measure, but in whole, I support the Bicameral Conference Committee, and it is only fitting to congratulate the Majority Leader and the Chairman of the Committee for working very hard and for essentially defending also the Senate version, and to all the members of the BICAM Committee. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, just to quote my Senate President Pro Tem, in a newspaper article today, he said that I would rather have an expensive peace rather than a cheap war. And I salute you for that, sir. Peace is expensive, yes, but we would rather not lose any more lives to achieve it. So we thank you, sir, for your invaluable support of the measure. So, Mr. President, before we suspend session, may we request our colleagues to remain in the session hall for the photo session. May we advise the public not to enter the hall while the photo session is ongoing. And we ask everybody all the members of the Senate to just be with us as soon as we suspend. Mr. President, there being no further business, I move that we suspend session until 4 o'clock this afternoon, at which time we shall reconvene at the session hall of the House of Representatives to hear, only to hear, Mr. President, the State of the Nation address of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte in a joint session of both House of Congress and the Senate. And when we adjourn the joint session, the session of the Senate shall be considered adjourned till tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Mr. President.
Any objection? Incidentally, maybe ask the spouses also to remain in the hall after the photo session of the senators. There is a motion to suspend the session until 4 o'clock this afternoon for the joint session of Congress. The members are advised to proceed and be seated at the session hall of the House of Representatives by or before 3:30 p.m. After the joint session, the session of the Senate shall be considered adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, tomorrow afternoon. Any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. The session is suspended.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Yeah, tama. Thank you. Saan? Dito?